And then we will finish with a discussion because we would like to move ahead with the observatory. So any idea, any feedback from the countries represented here would be very welcome for the team for a possible next phase of this project. That said, I would leave the floor to Robert Nasi, Director General of CIFOR, for an introductory speech.
Thank you, Paulo. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Excellency. So we are here to discuss about the East African Forest Observatory. And the story of this, it comes back almost a decade ago, where we started with the colleague in CIRAD and developing the Observatoire des Forêts d'Afrique Centrale, the Central African Forest Observatory. And it was a bit of a difficult exercise, but it was very interesting. And having this in place, country realized the importance of information. And because if we want to achieve our goals in terms of restoration, or if we want to achieve our goals in terms of forest governance, in terms of trade, it is very important to know where the forest is, what is the state of the forest, what are the differences in legislation between Tanzania, Mozambique, Kenya, other countries, so that you can really understand and take an informed decision. And as of today, this information exists, but it's scattered everywhere. So the idea of the observatory is to bring all this information together and also to give a dynamic view and an evolving view of this information by updating the observatory. So this is an important moment. We have finished the pilot phase, and we are trying to convince our partner in the country and our partner in the donor community that now we have shown that it is possible, it is working, and we need to develop and expand it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So the biggest, I would dare to say that the biggest part of this project was the development of a database and a website that shows all those information that are now available up there. And this has been the major task that the Regional Center for Mapping for Resources and Development based here in Nairobi has been doing. So I will invite Dr. Kenneth Ubea for an introductory speech. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. This has been a very good project that we've undertaken together in the spirit of partnership, working as 3 institutions. As Regional Center for Mapping, we represent 20 member countries from Ethiopia to South Africa. And this work we did for Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Mozambique. And we realized that there's a need for coming up with a knowledge management sharing platform that we can even share with His Excellency. And even the minister can click and see how he's doing. And also he can click and see what Uganda is doing, and also possibly Rwanda and Mozambique. So it is a very good platform that has brought all this information from the scientists, from CIRAD, CIFO, and the scientific work, bring it in a simple platform that you can all share, and also engage with the media who are there to engage the citizens on the value of conservation. As you can see, the recent trends we've seen in the news, what is happening in every area. We could have this system also scale up and see what are the historical trends and scale up. So with this system, we also plan to coordinate maybe regional capacity building activities, as we are discussing with CIRAD and CIFO, bring more scientists, bring more students, researchers, the media, and the citizens, so as we demystify that this week we can do together as a team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And then I will invite Plinio Sist, Dr. Plinio Sist, Director of a Research Unit at CIRAD in Montpellier, France.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm the last speaker, so everything has been said. I'm very happy to be here and to participate to this launch of this, I would say, prototype. I hope, as Robert and the other intervenants said, that there will be a second phase and that we will improve this tool, which is, I think, important. For CIRAD, it was really an exciting experience. We've tried to bring our experience of the Observatory of Central Africa into East Africa, and I must say from my colleague that collaborate to this project that that this was a very interesting and exciting experience, and we are very keen to continue this this adventure. And as a tool, I think it's really important to have this kind of tool, not only to know the state of the forest, but also to be able to monitor. And if we talk about restoration, it's important also to know what kind of forest and what are the states of the forest, how much we have as degraded forest, and what are the conditions of those forests. So congratulations to the team, and I hope you will enjoy this this launch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pena. Okay, now I give the floor to Dr. Mwangi and Ms. Mukwana. They have a very brief presentation on what was the project about and what were the major outcomes before we move to a presentation of the demo. Esther?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Paolo. I think, you know, before I start, I'd just say that this was a very interesting partnership, and it was the 3 organizations together, but also we worked with national forestry institutions. So we have John Disi here from Uganda, who was a partner from the National Forestry Authority. We have Alfred Gichu, who was also the contact person for Kenya Forest Service. We have Nuru Chamuya, who was the contact person for Tanzania Forest Service, but unfortunately our colleagues from Mozambique were not able to come. So this was work that was done jointly in partnership between the 3 institutions, but also together with national institutions. So what I'm going to do is give a very brief overview of what this project was about, what the key elements were. And then Laura will come in and dig a little bit deep into some of the key issues that we thought would influence the longer-term sustainability of this prototype. And then Patrick from the Regional Center will give you a demo of what it looks like, okay? And I forgot, sorry, thank you for coming and all protocols observed. And in particular, we are so grateful that, Mr. Mohamed Elmi has made the time to come here. As a Kenyan, I'm very happy, and as a scientist, I think this is great that we get a chance to interact with our policymakers. Okay, so first of all, I'll talk a little bit about our overall objective. Then I'll give you a sense of how we implemented this work, what are some of the project outputs and our timelines and achievements, and some of the visibility efforts that we did. So in terms of the overall objective, we were tasked with establishing a prototype, which is would you call it a blueprint? Maybe not, but something, yeah, something that could be used in developing an observatory, okay, for this region of Eastern Africa. And interestingly here, Eastern Africa was Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and we also included Mozambique. And I think that was a very nice thing and a very interesting thing to do by the donor, because this was all decided by the donor. And Mozambique might not be geopolitically in East Africa, but it is geographically in Eastern Africa. So we're establishing this prototype of an observatory, and it was not a single project on itself. It was part of a bigger thing that the Joint Research Center of the European Commission was doing. They were working to strengthen national and regional capacities for reporting on REDD+. So this was supposed to be something that would help them work towards that. Okay. In terms of implementation strategy, we had several clusters of activities. We had the first cluster of activity, which was actually handled by the regional center, who have the skills and the tools and the knowledge and the capability to do that, which was to develop a database and then also a web platform that could be used to display, to support analytics and everything. And Patrick is going to demonstrate that for you live. The second cluster of activities was, of course, involved a regional center, but was mostly a C4 CIRAD kind of work. And the first thing was generating a state of forest and REDD+ report. Now, that was actually, in the prototype, this state of a forest and REDD+ report is something of a policy output, something that can be shared with policymakers, right? So the point was that, fine, you're going to develop a database, a web platform, an observatory, but the point of the observatory, as our first three speakers said, is really to actually provide policymakers and practitioners with information that they can use for decision making, okay? So cluster 2, the first part of cluster 2 was really the state of a forest report that shows the trends in forest cover change, some of the key drivers of deforestation, some of the monitoring activities, techniques, and things that are on the ground, and those are for presentation to policymakers. We have a short form version. Okay, we have a short form version of that state of the forest report if you're interested, and it's here. The last cluster of activities involved thinking through, fine, if you develop an observatory, how do you make it sustainable, okay? And so this last cluster of activities really assessing the conditions that would allow for sustainability. And Laura did an excellent job in getting that assessment done, okay? And of course, the outcome was a functional database, a website, etc., and you're going to see more of that. So the project outputs was a database, a report, and recommendations that Laura will present. In terms of the project timeline, it was a pretty short project. We began in 2016 at the end of it, and did a whole series of activities, got evaluated in July, of 2017, and it was a pretty good evaluation that was very positive. And in December of 2017, we handed in the first set of outputs, those 3 outputs, the drafts, and then in January went and made physical presentations of those, and then in April of this year, wound up the project. So, so this is again one of the achievements, is that online web platform that they're going to show. This is the state of the forest report, and it is online. And here we have the summary. And we did several things throughout the year to try and showcase what we're doing, to disseminate, to let people know that this is a resource that is coming. And Laura wrote a blog, I think several blogs. And then we also, from those blogs, there were people who came to us, like Inba, asking more, Ecometrica, who actually want a collaboration. And we also did conferences. The RCMRD colleagues are part of this AfriGeos program, and they go and present. The RCMRD also has conferences every year, and we're lucky for that, because then they bring all the key technical people, in government especially, from all the different countries, and I hear this really sold well. And then also when the governing council met, apparently they were also interested in adding Rwanda, in adding, was it Mauritius or Seychelles? Which one was it? Mauritius. Botswana also wanted in. So a lot of interest was generated. Our Director General took part in a World Bank set of presentations in Bogor, and he talked a lot about this as well. And we've been disseminating here in Kenya in the Forest Issues Group, and also the East African Legislative Assembly has been interested in what we are doing. We've also had a chance of, after towards the end of the project, we also disseminated further and went back to Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Mozambique, and had actually the European Commission delegation in each of those countries actually bring different people together, the stakeholders, to actually discuss this. So that was very useful and insightful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon. So I'm going to share with you some of the key recommendations for the long-term implementation of the observatory that we came up with in line with assessing, in line with looking at how we can make this observatory more sustainable on the long term. And these recommendations were from various sources. These are some of what the stakeholders proposed. And also we did a comprehensive and kind of a comprehensive assessment, and of the institutional structures and processes along the data chain in the 4 countries. And also we looked at several similar initiatives in the region. So this is how we came up with these recommendations. So I'll take you through the key recommendations, the potential risks and bottlenecks that we identified that could be a hindrance to the sustainability of the observatory, and also a short conclusion. So the number 1 key element that you need for a functioning system in the long term is governance structures. And by governance structures, we're talking about the rules, the guidelines that need to be in place to ensure and guide the processes of data generation, data sharing, and collaboration. Because the thing is that for this observatory to be a success, there needs to be collaboration within the countries, that is within the institutions in the forest sector, and across the countries. So you need instruments in place. And some of the most important instruments that you need in place are something like a data sharing policy and framework that is developed with all the relevant stakeholders to ensure that the process of data sharing is really guided. There are clear regulations. Who can use the data? How will the data be managed? Issues of intellectual property rights, how are they going to be managed? And memorandum contracts to guide the collaborations. Then the number 2 thing that you need is a system of incentives. Because at the end of the day, everyone who wants to share data would be interested in knowing how they're going to benefit from sharing that data. So the incentives are meant to motivate the actors. They're meant to create demand for the observatory. And one thing that we realize is that these incentives need to be in line with the needs of the institutions, with the needs of the countries. So you can look at maybe addressing pressing policy and management issues and the like. And you also need to provide some sort of funding, not necessarily the actual amount, but you can work together with the stakeholders to do joint fundraising to kind of fund these data generation processes. Because one thing that came out very clearly from the assessment that we did with the institutions in the forest sector is that the lack of adequate resources is a major issue. So you need to kind of overcome that and try to collaboratively mobilize funds to support these processes. Then you need capacity building, because that's another challenge. There is the financial capacity, there's also the technical capacity, because you find that in terms of forest monitoring, the techniques are always changing, the methodologies are changing, the data is changing, so it's really important to keep up with that. So you need to train them, you need to provide maybe a platform where they can exchange experiences. These institutions across the countries can exchange experiences and learn from each other. And also you need collaborations to be in place, because here we found that in these countries, the forest sector data is not produced by only one institution, it's produced by several institutions. So you need to find a way of collaborating with all these actors, bringing them together. And this, at the end of the day, will also be a network for data generation and for analysis. And it's also important to find a way of including actors who are normally not adequately included, such as the community, such as the private sector, who are becoming major players in the forest sector. And at the same time, we recognize that there are several similar initiatives in the region, and so it's important to find ways of linking up with them so as to avoid the duplication of efforts, because there are initiatives that are doing similar things in this region. And you also need a communication strategy, and that's to create demand for the observatory. That needs to come up with key messages, like looking at who to target with this observatory, what message, if you're targeting decision makers, what kind of message you're going to give to them. And that at the end of the day will help to create more demand for the observatory. Then monitoring and evaluation strategy, and also a binding protocol among the participating countries to ensure that they in part fund the data generation processes. So some of the potential bottlenecks and risks we identified, that was the lack of regional comparable data sets, because the various countries use different standards in terms of forest definition, the variables collected in terms of forest monitoring. There's a language barrier. Of course, we have Mozambique in the project, and the official language and national language is Portuguese. Then there's a lack of acceptance of the observatory and endorsement of the observatory if we don't include, if the actors in the various countries are not included from the beginning. And also there's a hindrance to data generation and sharing, because maybe the stakeholders don't see the benefit, or also because of the lengthy communication protocols or data access protocols that we identified. So in conclusion, what we have seen is that there's a keen interest in the observatory across the region and across the implementing agents. And like Esther mentioned, when the regional center presented the project to its member states during the governing council, Rwanda, Botswana came up and said they're interested in the project. And also the basic minimums for this observatory to work, you need the governance arrangements, that's the MOUs, the data sharing framework, you need incentives, and you need a communication strategy. So I think the question that we need to ask ourselves at this point is what's next? We're looking at maybe launching a 4-year pilot to implement, maybe integrating it into the agency work plans. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. And now I'll invite the regional center to come and show us what's the observatory online. Thank you.
Good afternoon to you all. My name is Patrick Kabada from Regional Center for Mapping. I'm going to showcase to you the observatory, the OFESA observatory that we developed jointly with CIFO and CIRAD. First, are you able to see? Okay. So to begin with, I'll I need to browse into, I need to go to the website by entering that URL into the browser. That is apps.rcmd.org/OFESA. Are you able to see it? Okay, so that is the landing page or the home page of the OFESA website. So, okay, so the first thing that you see here is on top of the web page is the logo for OFESA, and then we have the main menu bar here. So the main menu bar allows a user to navigate through different pages within the website, and it comprises of tabs and drop-down menus. On the right here, you can be able to see that we have tabs that allow a user to change between English and French. We're trying to incorporate other languages inside because of different countries that we are working with. Below, see we have flags here that represent different countries. And these flags, if you click on them, you're able to go to the state of forest and red information or pages. Just scroll down, you can be able to get the technical report on the current state of Eastern African forests. Is a PDF document that you can be able to download and read. Below here, you can be able to see the main institutions that we worked with in different countries. Just a list of them here. You can be able to see Kenya Forest Service. We have the National Forest Authority and others. And on the footnote of the page, you're able to see the quick links. These are the quick links that are important links for this website, the social media pages. And then you have logos representing the funder. The Richard Red project was funded, which funded the project through the European Union. And we have the main implementing partners, that is Regional Center for Mapping, CIFO, and CIRAD. So that's the homepage. If you go to the About Us tab, you can be able to see that we have a brief description of the project. And we also have a small graphical animation here which shows forest area coverage per country. So the third tab here is the state of forest and red. So this one contains all the most important information in this website. It's categorized according to regions. We have countries and regional outlook. The countries represent information, the red plus and the forest state information per country. And then the regional outlook represent general information and also comparison information between different countries. For instance, scroll down, can be able to see that we have percentage of GHG emissions in land use and forestry in different countries that participate in this project. These are the four pioneering countries. We also have information on number of people who are directly employed by the forest sector, forest sector contribution to GDP, and on the last bit of it, there's some statistics information that shows how forest has been changing over time from 1990 to 2015. The third tab here represent forest indicators, and these forest indicators were country specific. For instance, what you see here is the Tanzania forest indicators. They are the main parameters that are used to measure or to assess how forests are performing within a given country. So you can be able to see that we have carbon density and stock at regional level. We have drivers for deforestation and degradation. We have indicators such as forest cover types, forest ownership, etc. So these indicators are country specific. So we have another drop-down here menu called Map Tools, and the Map Tools consist of two important applications. We have the Map Viewer tool. The Map Viewer tool allows a user to interrogate more of the data that we used, the geospatial or the geographic information that we used in building up this website. We also have the spatial catalog, which allows a quick check or a quick search of underlying data sets and also information about that data. So the last tab here is the documents, a very important tab also, because it shows all the documents or all the journals, publications that were used to bring up this website. So basically, we've included a document search panel here on the right, which allows a person to quickly search through the information. The reason as to why we are doing this is because this is a database, and it's going to grow over with time. Therefore, we have to make it easy for people to search. I wanted to just showcase briefly the Map Viewer tool here and see how it works. So as you can see, it's quite interactive and it's quite fast. So anybody can be able to just quickly have a look at it. So this is the Map Viewer tool. Again, we have just used the same format. One can be able to access information at regional or at a country level. The data sets are taking a little bit too long to load here. Maybe it's internet from our end. But one can be able to find layers here, can be able to do some querying here. We can do some comparison like layer sweep, which is quite interesting. And one can be able to print out a map or download the entire data sets. And again, it allows shifting between different dialects like English, Portuguese, and French. That's it about an overview of the OFESA website. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start first. Some technical questions, some clarification questions for the panel. Couple of minutes in case you didn't understand something. Please, if you can just introduce yourself and say to whom the question is directed, please.
I'm from the European Union. Slightly, I saw that it was funded by the European Union, but I would be clear that it's totally funded by the European Union, this exercise. What I'm, regarding a technical question, I think we are interested as an observatory to see what has changed in time. Is it possible with this site and their own to see when the forest cover has changed in a particular country? That is what I want to know. Thank you.
Okay, we take another question. Do you note down? Yes. Please, Excellency. Oh, sorry, go ahead, go ahead. I didn't see the hand.
There was a mention of a lengthy process of accessing via protocols that needed to be maybe overcome by potential users. So I wondered about that.
A question about the protocols. Excellency, please, here in front.
Mine is a follow-up of what you asked. Apart from giving historical, is it able to be real-time, and how often? So if I'm sitting in my office and I think forest exercise, something, can I click, and is it linked to some satellite or not?
Okay, let's start with these three. So if maybe Esther, do you want to start with the second one about, or Laura, about the protocols? And then we go for the two for the regional center.
Okay, thank you for the question. When we talked about the lengthy data access protocols, they differ, and we found that they depend based on the institution, and it depends on the type of data, it depends on the actor who is asking for it, whether it's maybe a student, a researcher, private sector actor, or the like. And maybe just to answer that it really varies. There's no one specific one, but you'd find that in some cases, since we mentioned that the data is produced by multiple stakeholders, you'd find that maybe in one instance, this data is in a different ministry. Like, for example, in Tanzania, they have the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism, where the Tanzania Forest Services Agency is, and they have the President's Office, the PULRAG, which is in charge of local administration, and they're also in charge of some forests which are not managed by the state. So to get that information, you have to go through the office of the Prime Minister. So those are the lengthy protocols that we're referring to. And also it depends on the sensitivity of the data. If it's considered to be confidential or classified, that will really take a long process, and that also depends on who you are. That can only be accessed by some actors, not everyone. Thank you.
Regarding what has changed over time, yes, we've shown it in the portal. You can be able to see that we collected data from different countries, and we were able to show trends from 1990 to around 2015. You can see that at country level, and just please visit the website to verify that information. Again, something that is important is that all this information had to be verified by the country representatives. So we only relied on information that we were able to get from countries. Another thing is on real time and not historical data. Yes, we are able to do real-time visualization of the data if we can be able to incorporate data set from MODIS receiving station and other receiving stations that we have at regional center. These will just involve additional input in terms of development of that or enhancement of our website, and also the enhancement of the map viewer. So this is also doable. Thinking that we can do this in the next phase of the project.
If I may, Excellency, one problem with the real time is that these are data that are officially approved by the countries. So once they are ready to put them online, it means that they have already gone through a process of vetting by whatever ministry or agency of the state. So it's difficult to connect data that takes sometimes, I mean data in terms of quantities, you say trade, etc., with satellite images that might be from yesterday. So the satellite might be available, but the capacity to see what type of data is shown by those images is not there in real time. It comes out at regular intervals. Okay, another series. Plinio, please.
Yes. First of all, I would like to congratulate all the team for these outstanding results. I must recall that this has started only around 18 months ago, so it was a very short time. So really, I'm impressed by the results. And I have a question about again, about the forest type. To your knowledge, do you think that if there is a second phase to be funded, do you think that, based on the knowledge of the data availability, would it be possible to have a more detail about the state of degradation of those forests? Because I've seen a table about forest type, but do you think that there are data that would enable us to map the state of degradation of the forest, of this different forest type? Of course, for the second phase.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Amos Amanubo from Uganda, part of the youth group. You just say that, thank you very much for the great project you are doing. You just say that the data that you use is verified by the ministry of the respective countries. And he said earlier on that the data that you are able to receive, you take it. And the one that is not available is left. Do you have a system of kind of a third-party system that verifies the data that you receive from the countries? Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other hands, oh yeah, one hand there for a third question.
Okay, thank you. My name is Marceline Ojwala. Thank you so much for the great work. It has come out to be really good. My question is probably to Esther and Laura. For the next phase that probably will be starting, I don't know when, do you think it will be possible to consider also looking at the data generation? Because I believe it will be necessary to keep on updating the data on the observatory. And then again, you've worked with all the relevant institutions within Kenya specifically that are working on forest matters. And now you have the links, and then there are also existing networks. Will it be possible to consider data generation for the observatory and any other processes that will require the same data? Thank you.
Do you want to start with the forest degradation question? Do you want to take the one on the forest degradation?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that question. Regarding forest, different forest types and their degradation, I'm aware of a few projects that are currently working on it. We have monitoring of environment security in Africa, that is MESA. And this information can also be well incorporated into the platform. So it's all about collaboration between different partners because we cannot be able to do everything at the same time. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Laura or Esther, you want to?
Thank you, Marceline, for the question. So just to clarify, you mentioned that we have established the links with the institution. Did you want to find out whether we're willing to consider them in terms of data generation for the observatory in the future? I think, yeah. Yes, data generation is going to be part of the activities for the next phase because, like you mentioned, there needs to be up-to-date information. So one of the other things that we had proposed is now to have those national groups in place where you have all the stakeholders in the forest sector coming together on a certain timetable, like having a timeline to collect the data and to verify the data before it goes up on the observatory. Yeah.
Thanks, Laura. I think the other really interesting thing was we had a discussion actually with RCMRD and have written several proposals together. And when we went around to the different countries, when the EC delegation actually brought stakeholders together to actually look at this and give further opinion, one of the things that really came out was that this was mainly focused at the national level with national level institutions, which is great. But they're saying, is there a way of opening this up? So one of the things that came up was trying to see whether we can use communities to monitor some of these places, to have programs, and use that to actually fill some of the data gaps. So that's another thing that we would also wish to consider, going forward. Can we expand, you're right, Marceline, expand the range of actors that are actually providing or feeding data into this program?
So let me put a couple of questions on the table, and then we go into a discussion. You can still pose your question once we... during the operationalization phase, we found two major, at least Laura that roamed all these countries for 6+ months, two major problems, barriers. One is on data sharing. So one question is for a next phase, whether there will be a next phase, but how can we improve data sharing? Because we found that there are several problems before the data even reach the observatory. So do you have any opinion, any idea about that, or the panel as well is, from your experience, can put something on the table? And the other one, Esther already started, it's not only about communities. One other big player is the private sector. So how, or should the private sector also be and put into the game and upload their data, or be able to produce data and put the data into something like this observatory? So these are the two major questions that I would put on the floor. Whether you have, if you have others, you can certainly add. Certainly, there was one about how countries themselves can help operationalize the observatory itself, because otherwise it becomes something that is really not sustainable. So country, how do we buy? How do we get the buy-in from countries? These are the three major points I think that we need to discuss. Maybe if you want to give a lead and start elaborating on some of them, or if you have already opinion from the floor, please feel free to express yourself.
Thank you. My name is John DC from Uganda, and I've been part of the team. So I wanted to clarify on a few issues, like the issue raised by the Director Sirad about forest types and the state of degradation. I will talk on behalf of Uganda. It's already possible to differentiate between different types and also give the state of the forest in terms of deforestation. The state of degradation is still a challenge. It's like if you you sip on your water bottle and leave it there, somebody else comes and sips, and when you come back, you may not know whether somebody else has sipped, because you left it about half, it is still about half. So we don't have good scientific methods yet to exactly determine or monitor degradation. But it is still, we are working on it seriously, And we hope in the near future we'll be able to determine forest degradation. To improve on data sharing, I think now where the world has reached, most institutions are willing to share their data. The problem is assessing or monitoring forests all over the country takes a lot of time. Most people want the data now, but it takes time to process all the data and have it ready and authenticated. So that delay may be interpreted as reluctance to share data, but that's not the case, at least for the case of Uganda. Thank you.
Now, let me clarify that the problem here is not the treatment of data, it's really the other one. So the data are there, but they are not shared because of different reasons. So this is, I think, the problem that we have on the table, right, Laura? Okay.
So I have the mic first. So I'm Kenneth from Regional Center. The one on the data sharing, I'm trying to think about the role of technology and how we've moved in the last like 1 or 2 years because of the internet. So we are looking at an opportunity where we can have more people like the private sector and the universities is to create this portal, the data open. So we could have even hackathons. I think this is a new way that we are working towards, and also try to use the new platform like Google Earth Engine. So this is something we'll look at in the second phase, bringing up the other sectors, private sector, and also the university, and also the youth. I think they are featuring very much in this workshop. Yeah.
I mean, first, congratulations for what you have been able to demonstrate. From just what I've got now is that it is something useful that a country must do themselves. I mean, if countries have committed themselves to X number of hectares to restore millions of hectares, without this, then how do you do it? So I think that maybe to turn it on the other way around and say, look, is this something you like? It is US, and we can support you initially how to put it up, but and then join it up later. So for me, for this to be sustainable, the countries must be willing to put money, put their necessary groups who are giving the information in place. But what this project has done is to show it can be done. That's all I would say, because that's what I've been asking since I came to the ministry. Do we have, with the technology that we have, with the capacity of satellite and all that, can we not actually do a real time, every quarter or every year, can we not know the state of our landscape, I would say, even not forests only, yeah.
Thank you for giving me opportunity to supplement what Mr. Johnny DC has said. My name is Adata Margaret. I'm from Uganda, Commissioner for Forestry in the Ministry of Water and Environment. For me, mine is just to respond to the question you put on the table, that should there be another phase of this project or not, and with regard to sustainability and ownership. Now, when you would want to sustain this and also let the countries own, the sensitivity of some of the data, and there's the dynamism of the changing scenario on the ground, which at times goes very fast. So I would rather, when you want to look at forming country groups, also having country-led preparations, and then you should also look at the setting at the national level. Who is the best to coordinate? Who can own up on behalf of the entire country? Yes, in case of Uganda, we have the capacity, the GIS capacity in National Forestry Authority. But what happens is that even when, as the ministry, we want some data, some information, we liaise with NFA to do for us that work, but eventually we own it as government. So you should take perspective of that for us, we'll be working. We have the universities. They are also having their data sets. It's important to coordinate this all, and we have one stand. And maybe, I don't know the situation in other countries, but for Ugandan case, I think that is the best way to go when we have another opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Charles Mwangi from the East African Wildlife Society. And mine is just to commend the presenters really. I think this program has come at a time when Kenya as a country has just received some funding through UNDP on RED+. And within that particular grant, of course, there will be the RED strategy that's going to be really refined. And there is also the question of forest monitoring, which is a critical component. And I think this system can actually build very well and link up very well with what is happening within RED. So I think RED has a lot to borrow from this. And possibly we need to think about how we then link that particular process so that RED can benefit, from this system. Thank you.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Mine is question on sustainability, or rather a comment on sustainability of the project. I am Jogu from DRSRS, Minister of Environment. And mine, I want to look at the backward-forward linkages in every sector, that is, maybe its production to the consumer. Now, I want to look at the observatory from the sense of the producer and the consumer. I tend to think that both are benefiting from one another. That is, if it's maybe the local communities or whoever from wherever that information being generated to the person who is generated two benefits. So I'm trying to see how can we enhance this linkage between the producer and the consumer such that each one of them perceives the importance of it, and therefore we have that sustainability that we perceive that it may contribute to the sustainable development that we are looking at. One more thing that I also want to look at is the data sharing that we have talked about now and then. And this has got a wrong genesis because I've been involved in a number of forums where the same has been discussed. Now, in that regard, I wish maybe if it's possible, the countries which are concerned generates maybe a generalized standardization that makes it usable to every one of the countries, because maybe we are talking of the same environment that is common to every one of us. And that's my maybe point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to everybody for participating. Again, very warm thanks to His Excellency. It's been a pleasure to host you here. And I let you to your other activities for the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists as well.